Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 111th session of Virtual Book Club. I'm Benita Lee, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by guests every week. Some have even read the book. Book Club started in October of 2020 during the global pandemic. Each week, we would hold a Zoom meeting to read and discuss themes and topics that we found in the books of our time. Book club is not mandatory. The guests drop in if their schedule allows. I'm grateful because some of them have always shown up, and I've never had to do this alone. In the past, when only one other person showed up, we talked about business, social media, streaming, and I got to know them one-on-one. Join us in comments, ask to be a guest in studio, or suggest a book topic that you'd like to discuss. And then as I bring up our guests, don't forget to tell us where you're from. Rob Berry, Hal Guerin, and Carissa Pilster. How are we all doing today?
Good.
Doing great.
It's better than the alternative.
Yeah, it's snowing here in Calgary. Late April. It's like our third winter.
It was not snowing here in Florida.
Yeah. What is snow?
It's the white stuff.
Just wait. It'll be snowing in Florida soon. So it's coming. But it was snowing here in Denver last night too. So, and it's a chilly day today.
So did y'all see the story before we get into the book? Did y'all see the story where you probably saw the story where Fort Lauderdale had 26 inches of rain, more than 2 feet of rain in 7 hours?
Yeah.
Did you see the story that the Floodplain Managers Association was meeting in Miami as that was going on, and some of them couldn't leave the hotel because streets were flooded on their way to the conference venue? So the floodplain managers got flooded out.
Did any of them have ideas on how to fix it?
No, probably not. Yeah, look, they were looking for the drain plug at the bottom or something. I don't know.
I saw one video there where somebody's walking through like a very high-end luxury car dealership, and the water was like up to the bottom of the door frames. It was like Ferraris and Porsches and every expensive car that you could imagine, and they're pretty much toast. I'm just like, wow.
I wonder if they were wearing Nike shoes while they were trudging through the water.
Yeah, I wonder if they're waterproof. I've never tried that. I have some golf Nikes that are high tops, and I think they're waterproof.
You get on the greens early in the morning, and it's all wet from, at least in California, it was always wet.
Yeah.
Used to be soaked by mid-morning if you didn't.
That's right. I love that. I love the morning dew. Like, I don't see or smell much of it, but I love the morning dew. Hi, Bobby. Bobby's coming to us from a golf course himself, it looks like.
That's right.
Nice. Hey, guys, I have a question. How did the culture of Nike contribute to its success? And what values and principles did the company uphold?
Ooh.
Yeah. These are questions by ChatGPT. We asked it, Avel, thank you, Avel. She's not here today, but she brought up these questions. How did the culture of Nike, in the book, he never really says like, this is our culture, and there's not much time spent on it, it feels like.
I think the culture through the time period the book is about and the culture today are probably quite a bit different.
Yep.
So if you're asking, is the question about Nike in general or Nike in its, infancy to, where the book kind of leads you through? Yes.
We can talk about both. We can talk about both.
Well, I mean, one of the things that would come to mind, and and I know some would say it's arguable by some of their actions. So I don't mean to get into a debate about it, and we can park this because it is more about the culture today, and that would be about social issues and things like that. And so, but I don't think that's what you're asking the question. It's really about sort of the early phases of the entrepreneurial aspects of Nike's founding and development, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well,
I have no idea then.
David had the same question. David Lee was saying, are we talking about the internal or the external culture? Last week we talked about external, like what kind of legacy Nike left to like marketing and all that stuff, all that jazz, which is like really cool because when we think of brands, and I know David, you have a presentation on brands and you bring up Nike as like the most recognized, one of the most recognizable brands of all time, the swoosh. But today we're talking about the internal. So like one of the internal parts of culture that I read and stuck out to me was the fact that Phil Knight himself, he hired people that did things that he couldn't do. So when the culture is in doing that, you're saying, you're a really confident leader in that you don't have a problem with people that are smarter than you in the room.
Well, I'm just thinking, I try to surround myself with people who can do things that I can't do, but I don't know if it's out of confidence or laziness. So,
well, based on the way the thumbnails of our pictures are on the screen, we have you surrounded. Just so we're here for you. We're here for you, Rob. We have you surrounded by talent.
We got your back.
It's a hard job making me look good. That's a very hard job.
And on that note,
he gave up.
You. Sorry.
He said it was too hard of a job, so he just gave up.
That's what this is about. I'm out of the pool. I'm out of here.
This is gonna be virtual Rob's book club here soon.
Everybody's just gonna leave.
But the values of Nike, I mean, it's innovation, sustainability, diversity and inclusion, customer focus, and excellence. So, I mean, really, if you look back at it, their culture of diversity and inclusion, especially, I mean, these days, I mean, one of the things that they're doing is the women's campaign right now, which is amazing. I think they kicked that off in March during Women's History Month. And, what was it? The soccer with the bus and the big old bowling ball, or the big ball that was coming into it, as they kicked the ball at the goal, and then you'd have this giant sledge come into a bus, and they were talking about they're just really promoting women's diversity, which was amazing. And I think that being able to be, and then create the creativity, I mean, being able to be outside the box, being able to like, hey, we're not going to go like everybody else is doing this, let's go do this. I think that's where, let's take a chance with this. I think that's where they, what is a lot of what they contributes to their success, people that are willing to take those chances and not stay in the fold of everything else is what really helps.
Yeah. What you said caught my ear when you said about diversity, like one of the founders was a guy that had an accident and is sitting in a wheelchair and Woodle. And it seemed like nothing stopped this guy, and Phil Knight really relied on him as his like right hand.
Yeah, I think, to what we're talking about. I think, if you look at Nike and what we know Nike to be today, they have a culture or a desired culture by design. And when you consider the time period in the book, I think they had a culture by happenstance. It wasn't a thought of this is what we want the organization's culture to be, and let's come up with some words and all that stuff, to try and represent the what we want to be. And so I think you led with Carissa, the innovation, and I think that was still that's core to Nike's foundings and beginnings. I questioned diversity when in Nike's very, very beginnings, they were just a bunch of white, unathletic guys, other than Phil Knight himself. But I think creativity was part of the early part of the culture, and entrepreneurial spirit was part of the early part of the culture. And I think authenticity. They knew what they were, they knew what they wanted to do, and that's what they tried, and that's what they did, regardless of the obstacles. There was an authenticity to it.
Oh, huge. And remember in the various court cases how Phil Knight was like, well, what do you think of that? Like, honesty works. So, like, truth telling was, I think, a huge part of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the culture, Nike, they were innovators. Everything that was coming out was new. They made the basketball shoe really, really cool. Then they turned around and made the running shoe cool. I mean, how many people were really wearing running shoes outside of people running track? And I think they made a lot of things really cool. And there was a simplicity surrounding it, and there was uh, a lack of fear to try new things. And with big risk, either come huge failures or huge rewards. So we know a lot about the rewards. I wonder what big failures they had, and I wonder what drove them to not be afraid. And I think that's the biggest part that contributed to their success was being creative, but then also being fearless.
Right.
There are a lot of creative people who are afraid to show the world what they can do. So
like 80% of the population, probably.
pretty much, yeah.
And I'd flip that a little bit, because I think fearless became part of their culture, but I think in the early stages it was fearful. It was fear of failure. It was fear of not being successful. It was fear of not living to commitments. It was fear of not living to promises. It was fear of being able to pay off suppliers. And it was fear that drove the company's drive for innovation and success.
That's so true. He talks about his fear.
Failure is unacceptable, and that's the true entrepreneur.
He talks about fear a lot. Like when you read the book, he's very humble about it, which is like the part I think I like the most, is that, he paints a picture of a humble beginnings. And I mean, that really speaks to people, right? I wanted to go to the second question because we've already kind of brought up innovation and creativity, but how did innovation and creativity play into it? And I guess what we didn't cover is how did the company stay ahead of its competitors? Like Adidas had been, number one for so long, and then Tigers were like probably number one in Asia. I don't know, maybe.
I don't think they actually viewed anyone as competition. I think they just did whatever felt right and it just hit. Cause I remember when Nike just hit the scene and they were just doing whatever, and they were usually the first to do whatever it was that they were doing. So I don't even know if they measured competition or if they just said, "Ah, screw it, we're gonna do what feels good today."
Yeah, they didn't pay a lot of attention to competition. Maybe it's because like they play against par.
Well, it was a belief. If you go back to the early days of trying to supply college track teams
Mhm.
with product that wasn't necessarily proven product, and a lot of risk taking and a lot of trust that was placed in Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman in terms of what they were going to provide on very competitive track teams. And to be on a college track team in the 60s and early 70s and in the Steve Prefontaine days, it was a cult, to be in that psyche and be part of that. And so I think there was incredible risk taking that really contributed to success. And it wasn't trying to beat competitors, but it resulted in putting an ultra competitive product to a
Mhm.
target market. That was all about being in a cult. And so if that cult wanted to just say, Nike, what is that? I'm not interested in that product, it would have not gone anywhere, but it became part of the mentality, the cultish nature of being a collegiate track athlete.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Like going after Michael Jordan before he was even professional. That was another one that they, he was still in college and they were chasing after him and signing him.
Oh, by the way, did you guys, any of you watch Air yet?
Yeah.
I haven't yet.
Oh, me neither. I need to. I don't know why, but when I watched the trailer, sorry, off topic, it kind of reminded me of Anchorman, like same era.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I get the feeling it's going to be really good and really funny. What did you rate it, Hal?
Right. What?
The movie.
I didn't see it. So,
Oh, I see. I thought I saw you nodding.
no, I was just picking up on Rob's vibe and nodding off, but
Don't nod off here. I'm trying to convince people it's fun to come to book
it
club.
is. Let's keep them muted.
I was reading about Nike's failures. I'm cheating over here at Chat GPT, but one of the early failures was they tried to use a
Cheater.
waffle iron for the waffle shoes. shoes. Apparently, that didn't work.
Yeah, Bowerman was kind of a mad scientist when it came to like really, like he would take the shoes of his athletes, his track runners, and like take them apart and mold them and customize them to that runner, like knowing like I don't know their pronation points or whatever, if they were flat-footed or not, and how they ran. So the waffle iron was, I think, was the waffle iron about how it bounced?
It was more about traction.
Oh, traction. Got it. Ever since then, ever since I read that, Carissa, I've been looking at people's runners to see if they have waffle design.
Yeah, I guess the waffle trainer shoe was in the 1970s. So
Right. Okay. This one's a really good question. How did Phil Knight balance his personal life with the demands of running a successful business? What sacrifices did he make, and how did he cope with the stresses and pressures of an entrepreneur? I ran out of space, Hal, so the question doesn't read the same.
Okay.
But I think, like back in the 60s and 70s, like work-life balance wasn't really a thing. Like people didn't aim for that, it feels like.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
He didn't balance his personal life with the demands of running a business. The business was his life.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was. I mean, if you're borrowing from your father, you have no personal relationships outside what you do. You travel in the world. You're putting in extensively long hours, and you're sacrificing almost any level of financial security to get something going. There is no balance.
Yep.
And he actually calls Nike, well, he called Blue Ribbon his third son. He had two sons, and he called the business his third son. So
Well, and truthfully, can you really have a life if you are starting a company that ended up being what Nike ended up being? Like, can you really have a life doing that? Seriously. I know we talk about work-life balance, but let's just be real.
But
There's no way you can achieve that kind of greatness trying to balance stuff out.
And he wasn't pursuing any level of greatness. He was pursuing a passion.
Right.
And
That turned into something that is arguably great. You know, and I'm going to say something that could be misconstrued, so I try to be careful here. You need to think back to the '60s. You know, the roles between men and women were, were inappropriately defined, but they were defined the way they were. And that doesn't work in today's environment, and it never should have, but it's the way it was. And so there was a lot of latitude to people like the Phil Knights as entrepreneurs that basically could have no personal life, could have, pay little attention to the demands of, raising a family,
Yep.
and things like that, in hindsight, we look at now, and go and say, that was just people have their priorities wrong. But that's what it was. That was very much what the culture was, in '60s America.
well, I mean, even now, I mean, with people trying to balance it more, I still don't know. It sounds like, I mean, he took his kids, or he went to his kids' sporting events, and he brought them into the office, and he participated in his family's life enough so that the kids later in life actually did say that he was they did feel that he was there for them in their lives, which is maybe short of some fathers today. And this was, like you're saying, back in the 1970s, 1980s. So it sounds like he was a good participant in their lives, more so than somebody that wasn't there at all.
And I'm going to date myself here to respond to that. I mean, I was born in the '60s. So my definition of my dad being there for me when I was growing up as a kid worked then. If you took his relationship with me and moved it forward 60 years, it wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
He would be a distant, uninvolved parent, because my mom did everything.
right.
And he'd show up and wave the flag at certain things every once in a while, but otherwise, he was just this guy who, left the house, worked crazy hours, and we barely see him. And then when he was home, he'd fall asleep from exhaustion, but that was what you expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying that was in an environment of meeting expectations that wouldn't work as societal expectations have evolved in a good way. Excuse me, I already had that. In a very good way. You know, the way I raised my kids was completely different than the way my dad raised me. I don't have any ill feelings about my dad, but
Right.
what he did, and what I did, you know, would not. What if I did what he did? It wouldn't have worked.
And I mean, I'd be interested to hear more about how his family life compares to a current day, more modern day CEO. You know, how is the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on names. Just throw a name out there of one of the more, Gen Z CEOs out there, or one of the more recent ones, and how are they involved? How are they involved in their families' lives? Is it comparable? Where they're, hey, I'm leaving work earlier. I'm going to cut out of a full day of meetings to go, or I'm going to fly back to see my kid's soccer game. Is that happening? So I don't know if we've seen that many memoirs yet of some of these newer CEOs, but I'd be interested in hearing how they're balancing.
And I think a lot of the memoirs are going to be the story they want to tell, or the story that they have convinced themselves is the story.
Well, have you ever read Warren Buffett's memoir? Well, it's not really a memoir. It's like a it's the same as, I guess it's the same as this. It's like ghostwritten by somebody else. It's called The Snowball and the Business of Life. You guys probably wouldn't like it. It's like this thick.
I've got a number of Buffett books, but I've not read that one.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's written by Alice Schroeder, I think, in case anyone's interested. But yeah, great point, Chris. I would love to compare his way of running a business as compared to like a modern day CEO. Is it same? Is it alike? Is it different? Is it, you know what I mean?
Well, and balance. I mean, I was one of the books that I have read is Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg's book, and she talks a lot about how she's very, she's not as involved in her family's life. Her husband was there to support her. She's like, if I didn't have my husband, I would not have been able to be successful in the way, she was the chief operating officer of
Right.
Facebook. So she was, very much involved in, or she was more involved in work, and she didn't get to be there for her family. And she was, I mean, that was completely reversed here. That was a woman, and her husband was there to support her. So having that helped her have that work-life balance, where she had a husband that was engaged, that would take care of the family. So
yeah, the partner matters a lot in these really in these situations. It seems like it really helps to have a supportive spouse. I think you're speaking to like his coping mechanisms. Like, I think one of the things that made him successful is that he had a very patient wife, Penelope. I love that name. How about you, Bobby Lee? I mean, you've got 3 or 5 kids?
6.
6 kids. How do you balance it all?
Mine are, I've got 4 that are in the teenage stage. So, when they hit that teenage stage, they're out the door with friends. And, I don't make it to everything. I'll be the first one to admit that, especially I've got 2 that are from another marriage that are in every sport under the sun. And I don't make it to a lot of their activities. But you do what you can. You become really good at planning, and you don't beat yourself up about missing things because, there's other things you've got to do. I think, too, I've got a copywriting coach that's really successful, and he talks about as his business has leveled up and as he's leveled his mindset up, he talks about how a lot of his friends and other stuff he had, income buddies, have all gone by the wayside because he says, I just don't want to do that anymore. because I'd rather be working on my business, or I'd rather be working on my mindset because I've leveled up. That kind of stuff just isn't entertaining to me. So I think that plays a factor in any successful business as well.
Huge. Like, not beating yourself up for those missed, because you're going to miss things. That's just life. But not beating yourself up, I think, is a hard one for parents. And just, investing in yourself really is investing in your kids in a lot of ways.
I was a small business, or I was starting my business when my kids were born, and it was not an easy, it was wake up, the kids are awake, take care of my kids, and then they take a nap, and I run and go do what I can on my computer to get it done, and then then they go back to sleep, go back to doing work. It's a challenge to raise kids, and then when my ex got home, they would take the kids, and I'd go run and do meetings in the evening with clients. So it was, you try to squeeze it in where you can, and and do that. But it's that's part of the reason why I'm not running my own business too. I wanted to be there for my family more. I wanted to be there for my kids. So I can to run it. You really have to have a strong spouse too in a relationship. I know there are some moms out there that have done it, and it's amazing what they're doing. So a single parent CEO is wow. Wow.
But you still have to have a support network. It just might be that, as opposed to being family members, it might be, you're paying, you're making it, there's an economic transaction to provide you that level of support, because there's no one who can do it all. You just can't. It's not
right.
I don't care what story somebody wants to spin. There are going to be sacrifices made, and if if running a business, whether it's a CEO of a company, or being a successful entrepreneur, you're doing that. Generally, you're doing that for something more than just the compensation of doing it. There's some level of passion behind it. And so, given choices, where are you going to have regrets, and where can you live with the regrets you're going to have? Is it going to be at the family or at the business? Because you're going to have them in the future, no matter what. And you make decisions every day.
Yeah.
Based on that.
That about summarizes it. What, or does someone have anything else for that last question?
I think the other thing I would add to that last question about, how he coped, was he had a strong sense of purpose and determination. He while he doubted a number of things, and he introduced in the book a number of self-doubts and concerns and risks maybe they shouldn't have taken at the time, you peel all that away, and he was driven by a sense of purpose and determination to accomplish what he envisioned. And I think that's a coping mechanism.
Oh, and I love like every time he talked about how he was avoiding answering, was it Jackson or Johnson? So one of his shoe dogs, Johnson, wrote him letters to tell him, not these would be emails now, but wrote him letters to tell him about what was going on at the store. And it was just like letter upon letter about every mundane thing. And I think Phil Knight's coping mechanism was just to ignore, like he didn't respond to any of it. And so I think knowing when to stay quiet is a coping mechanism or a skill.
It's definitely a skill.
Definitely a skill.
Great leadership skill. I was listening to the author of Radical Candor. I was listening to her speak yesterday, and she was saying, one of the things when you're talking to your team, you ask for a feedback question, and one of the things you should do is, count to 6 after you say it. Really make that 6 seconds. I think she's saying is that's when the really uncomfortable silence is there. So listening, anytime that you really want to put people uncomfortable or put it to the room to, run kind of lead or take over, give them a chance to lead. It's give that 6 seconds of silence. So.
Yep.
6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think?
I knew a while back we're done in a 2-hour time block. Then
A 2-hour time block? Sorry, Bobby, I missed what you said.
I think he froze.
Oh, okay. We'll ask him when he comes back. What do you think Phil Knight's legacy will be, both in terms of his contributions to the business world and his impact on society as a whole?
I think he'll be known as an innovator and someone who wasn't really afraid to shake things up. And I know I've said it before, but I'm just recalling the history of Nike, growing up, watching it grow up as I was growing up. And to me, everything, it was all new, but it just seemed normal. But now looking back, Adidas couldn't do it. Reebok couldn't do it. You even had, what was it, Asics and some of the other running shoe brands that tried to cross over the way that Nike did, and they're still known as good running shoes. As a matter of fact, Nike isn't even the best running shoe. They're the best example of the importance of establishing really good relationships and building trust. And that's the big takeaway and the big lesson from Nike, because they built trust amongst the collegiate athletes, first in track, and then all of a sudden in basketball. And a Nike track shoe, honestly, is not I ran track. It's not the most comfortable track shoe, but you still wanted to wear it simply because it was Nike, because there was a lot of trust built behind it. So I think it's a really good example of, you don't have to have the best product. You still have to have a good product. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
Nike is good. You don't have to have the best product, but what you have to have is trust, consumer trust. You got to have trust.
What a great point. Yeah.
I mean, I think the other part of it too is Nike's built a culture. I mean, there's Nike shoe collectors out there that have entire walls of shoe. Their original shoes went for like the Moon shoe went for $500,000 in auction. So it's and I'm sure there's shoes these now they're probably going for more, as these collectors start to do that. But he started that culture, and a culture that, going back to diversity, I think it's a culture that's really accepting of everybody, whether you're in college. It's not just about the pro athletes, it's about the college athletes, it's about it's about everybody athletes. It's about me and you, going out and playing. I mean, they have commercials with normal everyday people out there, and that's who they're celebrating, not just the professionals, not just the best of the best, but the ones that are out there doing that. And I mean, he built that. So I think that is part of what the legacy is going to be is, hey, he created this environment that's inclusive of everybody, and it's not, and it's, and it's pushing the limits of creativity as well to create the best of the best. And is it Nike that was trying to beat the 4-minute mile, and they had like the car, like they had the team that was training and trying to set new records too. So, or they were trying to get like the fastest mile, I think it was.
I'm not sure about the 4-minute mile. I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is you build a brand in sporting goods and sports apparel, based on volume, and you don't get volume by dedicating to, let's just say, collegiate track athletes. So that's where things started. You build the brand because it's going to be the weekend warrior, the average person who has, that, goes out and goes, running a few times a week for, just, fitness or whatever. It's the weekend warrior, the old average person participate in sports. And generally what happens is you find a brand and a particular shoe for that sport that you like. It might take trial and error, but you find one. I remember when I was running in my 20s and early 30s, I fell in love with the brand Saucony, and it really pissed me off. It really pissed me off when they changed models, and I'd go and buy the one, and they go, "Well, that they don't make that one anymore." Well, what's the closest thing like it? And so I'm trying on all these other Saucony shoes, and I had enough loyalty that I found a Saucony that worked for me as opposed to trying to change. I tried New Balance and I felt like I ran like shit. It wasn't the shoe, it was me. I sucked. But you find something you like and you tend to stick with it. And Nike has been successful in that market. And because it's built a brand around loyalty in that market, it's extended the brand into things like sweats and apparel and all the other things that make it a brand. So I really love the shoe, whether it's really good or not. I really love the shoe. Well, I'm gonna get the clothes too, because I want to be seen in a Nike swoosh. And so it built a mystique around the brand that had to take the original product loyalty and the weekend warrior athlete to develop a culture around it. It wasn't by design. It was by just dependability.
You're reminding me of that part in the book where they describe one of the first commercials, and it's just like a man and these huge Oregon trees and a path that he's going to run forward into, and just giving you like the feel of an athlete, a weekend warrior, as you said. And I just think about Nike commercials and how they make me feel. Like every time I watch a Nike commercial, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go do it. And I get this little feeling in the pit of my stomach that's just like, oh yeah, somebody understands.
I think Nike did for its set of products something similar to what Apple did. There's a mystique about the brand that creates a loyalty in wanting to not only buy the original product, but buy other tangential and related products.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Hal. Remember how they didn't want to go public for the longest time, but the week that they went public is the same week that Apple went public. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so Nike was doing what Apple was in a different area, and vice versa.
Huh. That reminded me of another, and I don't know if either of these companies fall in it, but some of the greatest brands actually started during recessions.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
I don't know if Apple or Nike fall into that category, but their startup years were some of these companies, their startup years were all during recessions.
Yeah, I forget what year that was. Do you remember? Was it 1985? How?
Oh, when they IPO'd, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and
I
I was
feel
thinking
like
the start of the year they started.
yeah. Well, yeah, 1985, or I don't even know if the book goes
December
there.
1980.
Oh, okay, 1980. Yeah, because 1980s was when, like the same as like we're getting some of the signals, like interest rates are going through the roof right now.
Actually, Nike did start during a recession year, 1964. So
Right.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, Benita. I just looked it up. They both Nike and Apple did IPO on the exact same date, December 12th, 1980.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
Yeah. Hey, Sia, you just got here on time to make
For us to say see ya.
see ya. No, for us to put your name in the hat. I'm drawing names from a hat today because I said I was going to give a giveaway. And I still have those magnets that I was going to give away last year, but I can't remember what happened. But they're super fun. So everybody has an opportunity to win a book club bookmark. Okay. Last words about Shoe Dog.
Highly recommend it to anyone who's not read it, especially if you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur wannabe.
Huge.
Absolutely. Throw something else, into the mix on that last question, Benita. Part of the legacy is going to be that entrepreneurs in the future should go read this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you can win when you're just like it's a real David and Goliath story, but more than that. I'm going to announce the new book if no one's going to have last words on Shoe Dog.
Ooh, what's the new book?
Decoding Greatness.
Oh, cool.
So that's going to give us the key to become great. We're going to decode the mystery.
How the best in the world reverse engineer success by Ron Friedman, author of The Best Place to Work.
I don't know if I can read that because after we finish it, there may be an expectation to actually do something great.
No, you just have to decode it, Rob.
Yeah, we'll just send you the Captain Crunch decoder ring that came at the bottom of the box, and you'll be all set.
That reminds me of I can never say his name. It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote Creativity. Also wrote Flow. So those are two of his books. He was a psychologist, and but one of the things that he did in Creativity is he went and interviewed some of the most creatives in the world to what made them creative, what made them be outside of the realm of a normal somebody who was normally creative. So that book sounds kind of like the same thing, going and interviewing like some of the greatest people and figure out how do you take that and move that backwards. But reading the Creativity book, he kind of dissected it and said, oh, well, there's your big C and there's your little c. And the people who are your little c all kind of fit within that box, and they kind of, they're creative. Like you look at what they're doing and it's like, it looks amazing, but it's already been done. People who are the big C are actually taking like kind of two different realms of creativity and blending them together. So I guess going back into like Bill Knight, like he took, what if we looked at like what two areas did he take and blend together to be like that creative? Like where did he step outside of that? So I don't know. This next book, it sounds like it's kind of, I wouldn't, it sounds like, oh, what did Phil Knight do? Let's take it backwards and deconstruct
it. Yeah, totally. It's like, how I'm thinking. I feel like it's a great book to follow up. Here's what Daniel Pink says. This book is your secret decoder ring for understanding how athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and even criminal masterminds create breakthroughs. Clear, concise, and backed by science, it's a powerful combination of analysis and storytelling that will transform the way you approach your next project. Who's in?
Did it come with a ring? Did it come with a ring?
I think maybe you have to get the book that comes with the ring.
That sounds like that should be like their book tour for it. They need to.
Yeah, totally. They should develop a ring.
Hand out ring pops.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's no expectation to be great afterwards. We just decode it and talk about it.
That's right. We're going to understand how others become great.
That's a load off my chest, I'm telling you.
Yeah, there's no pressure here, Rob. You don't even have to read the book if you don't want, remember?
You don't even have to spell greatness. That's okay.
Yeah. And you're still welcome to the book club.
I thought she said grape nuts. Never mind.
Grape nuts. Yes. Okay. We're going to choose a winner. I put everybody's name in here.
Did you put my name in there?
No, except for Rob's.
Good. Phil Knight's name is in there, though.
All right. The winner is David Lee. And and yeah, there is a bias. It's because his last name's Lee. David, I'll be sending you a bookmark. It's magnetic. Do you want to see it? It's like a clip, and then it's magnetic. And then there's just like, it's like the world map that has, that's what the print is, the world map. I got 4 more of those. So I'll be giving one out every second week. Okay. We've got 7 minutes. Sometimes we end sometimes we don't want to end. We're at like 1 minute and people want to go on about something. But today is one of those days where we have nothing to say and there's 7 minutes left.
I'm just looking for my shoe, dog.
I'm so glad you came, dog. What do you have out there, audience? Tell me, what is an Ethos MetaFest, Sia?
It's a festival in North Texas that she's helping to plan. She's consulting with the company.
Oh, fun.
And I just know that because we're such good friends, and she just typed it. She's going to kill me. I'm sorry, Sia. Sia is a friend. Sia is a great person.
She really is.
It looks like a South by Southwest type festival.
Yeah, it does sound like that.
Experiences and all of that. So I Googled it.
But everything is bigger in Texas, so it's probably really big.
Yeah, North Texas. That's real big. It's above, like, I think she's in Dallas, so she's probably traveling north. I wonder where that might be. Like, do you think it's just in the desert or something? A festival in the desert, like the Coachella or something?
Let's see.
Like a Burning Man.
Right. Like a Burning Man. Oh my goodness. I've never been to one. Have you guys?
It's in Arlington in August.
The Burning Man.
Arlington, Texas.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was like
Burning Man, I think is it Nevada? It's out in one of those deserts.
Yeah, I think Burning Man is in Nevada, and yeah.
You ever been?
No, have no desire to go.
Yeah.
Anything that they call a burning man. Being a man, I don't want to be set on fire. I just, you know,
They, I mean, Burning Man at one point was, I think, a very niche event, and it's grown into something that's not niche anymore. It's very like lots of major people, like major concerts and all of that go there, and it's not what it was when it first started. Where I think a lot of events tend to happen. Like, how do you keep that small
how do you keep it a secret? It's just out there in the desert.
Right.
You know, in all seriousness, I was reading, I think it was in the New York Post this morning, where some influencers are faking that they're going to Coachella, and then they speculated Burning Man too. But so they don't really want to go, but they want to be associated with the nostalgia around it, and so they're faking they're going to Coachella. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a clown world.
Although that almost sounds like, so let's say that you're doing a competing brand, or you see like, oh, like Nike or Apple, like, oh, they just have really good following, and like I can relate to their values and relate to their following, and I just want to like grab onto that. So you start creating around that to relate yourself to it and pull in their followers too. I mean, I could see that as a new marketing.
It's kind of like when I lived in Tampa and the Super Bowl was held in Tampa. And so I could say I went to the Super Bowl. I walked down to it, walked around the stadium, people watched, went back to my apartment and watched the game on TV because
that's the best way to do it. But what even would be better is if you could get a hot dog.
Like, I guess like opening day here, you go and half the people don't go to it. You just go and hop around to the different trail, or the different barbecues, or the different open, like everybody has an office party, and there's a bunch of, I guess there was like 7 of them that I knew about. I didn't make it to any, but there was I'd known about a bunch of them that you could just go, and I guess a lot of people go to it, but then they don't go to the opening. They don't go to opening day. They just go to the barbecues and celebrate the day.
So here's why I'm not going to go to Burning Man. Burning Man is an annual festival that takes place in Black Rock. To obtain tickets, you can purchase them at many tourism companies. People purchase a $2,500 reservation to guarantee the right to buy a ticket for the event.
Oh my gosh. I hope that cost goes towards your ticket, though.
Tickets last year said they were like $500 and some dollars a piece, and $140 to park a car.
Forget it. I'm not burning that ticket.
Cheaper to go to Disney, and I didn't think I could say that. I didn't think that was possible.
You guys are silly. I agree with everything Carissa said, except for niche. Like, what is it about you Americans that make you think it's a niche? It's not a niche, it's a niche.
I mean, is that kind of like quiche? I mean,
yes, it's like quiche. It's like niche and quiche.
That would be kitsch.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be a kitsch. Do you say quiche kitsch?
I mean, so many people pronounce my name Charissa, so I feel I'm allowed to mispronounce a word here and there.
Oh, how do you pronounce it?
And well, it's Carissa, and people will read it and they say it's Charissa. I would say it's like charisma. How do you say charisma?
Charisma.
So it's like Carissa, but people say, they'll see it, they read it, and they go Charissa. So I feel like I'm allowed to here and there.
I don't know if I've ever called you that.
I'm glad you haven't. So
awesome. Okay. We're going to end it there, folks. Have a good day. Thank you, Carissa, Rob, Hal, for being here. And I thank you, everyone in the audience. David, I'll get in touch with you by tomorrow and find out what your address is. I promise you, I'm not a stalker. Have a good afternoon, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, which is, do we have the date on that, guys?
May 4th.
May 4th. We will see you on May 4th. And we'll be reading Decoding Greatness. Get your copy. I'll be posting about it so that nobody misses out. See you.